Hello and welcome to the latest in the Leaders with Ambition podcast series. And today I'm absolutely delighted to welcome my guest, Gillian Ward. Gillian is Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer at Reed Smith. And it's going to be such an interesting conversation today. It sees Gillian growing up in a very small town just outside of South Yorkshire, which may mean nothing to people in the US, but will resonate with people in the UK. And seeing her develop into international marketing roles, first in engineering and then doing this huge transition into the legal industry. And she really found her stripes there, growing into the Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer that she is today. And she will discuss the importance of mentorship and sponsorship, and also the power of networking and how important it is to do this at all stages in your career. Gillian was really instrumental in launching the Legal Marketing Association for London and Europe. So we'll talk about that as well. And we'll share some personal reflections of Gillian growing up with twins and balancing motherhood and a very big career. And I think it's really important to recognise what a challenge that was. And also how many people do have to do this and keep balls in the air and keep juggling along the way. And we'll touch on the understanding of the transatlantic market, what it means to really run businesses between the US and the UK. And, the US isn't just one market. All the different states have very different markets in them as well. So it's a huge challenge. So lots for us to cover today and for us to dive into. So Gillian, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to bring your career history to life for us.
All right. Morning, Nikki, and greetings from Houston. Something I never thought I'd say if I could go back all those years in my career. I don't think I ever said I'll be in Houston doing a podcast with Nikki.
I love it.
On Friday morning. So thank you for inviting me. It's really nice to see you again. Thank you for this. So where to start? Yeah, back in South Yorkshire, I guess, as I was growing up there. Ended up coming out of university and working in the steel industry of all places in Sheffield. Jobs were very hard to come by in those days of the early 80s. And I think I was very fortunate to find one that was kind of in international sales, which is something that I was really interested in. Eventually, that firm was bought out by an American management buyout, the US operations and the South American operations, which were my territory. And the new management company asked me if I was interested in moving to North America to continue my role with them. To be honest, I'd never been to Vancouver, Canada. I knew it was on the other side of the world, but really didn't have a full appreciation for just how far away it was. Decided I would take it. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with that? And found myself in Vancouver on my own. The only people I knew were the people that I worked with in that office. It was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life. Certainly didn't appreciate the magnitude of it at the time. It was all a good jolly, as they say in England. As I say, I thought, well, what could possibly go wrong? And we'll talk about, the importance of my parents and the mentorship that particularly my mother gave me, who said, well, you can always come back here. It will always be the same. The same people will be here doing the same things as they were doing when we left.
That must have frightened you.
Yeah, right, with that. So I got it. It was the best decision I made. It changed my life in so many ways. Eventually transitioned into legal marketing, worked for an engineering firm for a while, and met a lady on a plane who was the chief operating officer for one of the Canadian law firms, who we were heading to the same executive development program in Toronto. Got to know one another through the course of the week. And flying home, she said to me, have you ever thought about working in legal? Because I think we're looking for a new CMO and I think you'd be great. And I said, why would I want to do that? That seems crazy. Again, one of the best fortuitous moments of my life. Said yes to the role, moved into the role, and have been in legal marketing ever since. So over 25 years now.
But I've got to stop you there, Gillian. How literally bonkers is that? You sat next to somebody on a plane heading to the same leadership retreat. Have a conversation and they talk about forks in your life. That was a really big one, wasn't it?
It was a big one, and I'm a big believer that everything in life happens for a reason. You might not know what that reason is at the time, but it became really clear to me as I started those conversations with that law firm that I was obviously questioning my career with the engineering firm, who had just been bought out by an American firm. And the options in front of me were there. I could have stayed with them. But one of them was to move to the US. How ironic is that?
Yeah.
But the time wasn't right in my life. My twins were tiny at the time. it just wasn't the right time for me to move to California. And that's why I believe, the opportunity came along. I was ready for a new challenge. I honestly thought it would be similar. Professional services, how different can it be?
Wow.
It was really, really, really different. And many times along that first 6 months, I thought, what have I done? Like, why did I do this? This is a whole other world, and I'm not sure I can grasp it. We're going to talk about, people who were sponsors and instrumental in cementing my career in legal marketing. And that managing partner was definitely one who he wanted to see change in the firm. He wanted something different. He was newly appointed to that managing partner role. And the appointment of this role was one of his election platform issues. So, he taught me what I knew. There was also an interim CMO there, a woman who we had some great laughs along the way. And she really gave me the ins and outs of the day-to-day of this role. From there, again, everything happens for a reason. Years later, I got a call from two consultants who I knew in the US, but who did not know one another, who talked to me about a firm in Houston, Texas, who were, again, looking for a CMO, new managing partner, wanted something different. I thought, yeah, okay, why not? I'll go talk to them. Changes were happening at the firm I was with. Maybe this is something I just need to pay attention to. And came down to Houston, met with them several times and thought, yeah, no, this is not for me. It was like moving from, third division football to the Premier League, or from the CFL to the NFL, for a North American analogy. But again, strong managing partner who said, I think you're the right person for the role, and we're going to make this happen. And so here I am, all those years later, still in Texas. Thought I was here for 2 years. I've been here for 12.
But again, just to take a pause there, that importance of having the sponsors that believe in you. As you say, you've had the managing partners, which is essential in your role to be able to have that connection with the managing partners as well, isn't it? You need to all be on all the C-suite, the managing partners need to be really on the same path and have that same idea of where the firm needs to go. What is it, do you think, that enabled you to have this buy-in with the managing partners in both those situations?
I think in the first case, the Canadian firm, he was on an aggressive growth plan, an international growth plan too, and wanted someone who had that broader perspective. And I was coming out of a vice president of global business development for an engineering firm. So I had that global view of the world. I also think developing that rapport and the relationship with the managing partner, now, that's not easy to do when everybody's, flying and moving in different directions. And we went in the same office. He was in Toronto and I was in Vancouver. Here, when I moved to Houston, I was down the hall from that managing partner. And we moved around a lot together. And that really helped. We were on the same corridor. We saw one another in the parking lot as we came in the morning. We lived very close to one another. It was easy to develop that relationship. That doesn't mean to say that we got along well all the time, or frankly, that we agreed on things all the time. But to have that mutual respect for one another and come back to, we're actually both trying to achieve the same thing. So maybe we just need to take a pause here, and maybe I need to go away and think about how I was positioning whatever it was that we were talking about in a different way. So to be able to meet him where he needed me to be was crucial, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard in these, as you go up and you move into national and then international and then global roles, to find those ways to connect with the key people on the management team and the managing partner so that you can keep those discussions open and frank and that relationship continue to develop. Yes, this is a great medium, but there's no substitute for being in the same office and sitting with people and chatting with people so they get a feel for you and for your vibe.
I think that's really great advice. And I know you're a really strong believer in face-to-face interactions to build relationships, aren't you? It's easier once you've built those relationships, you can keep them going in formats like this, but it's that initial piece to build that trust.
Yeah, it takes work and it takes a conscious effort of everybody, I think, to make it work and staying connected to the team. The bigger the team gets, the harder this is too. And knowing that you've got the right people on your team, that when I'm not there, they're continuing to think about my vision for the team and, behaving that way and helping me act on it. These are tricky roles when you're crossing continents and time zones and finding appropriate time for everybody. It does take a conscious effort, and there's the sacrifices of everybody along the way, both personally and professionally, to do these roles. But I just think it's so important that you're constantly aware of that and thinking about, how do I want to spend my time today? Is this a phone call? Is it an email? Is it a get on a Zoom or a Teams call with somebody? Or is this something that has to wait and go on my list for when I'm going to see them in person next time?
Yeah. And again, sometimes you do have to do that, don't you? It's got to be one of those conversation points that you think this can wait, so then I can do it face to face, where other times it's got to be dealt with in the moment. And then you have to deal with it on any platform, don't you? And you mentioned there that, you didn't think you were ready for that step up. So with that, did you feel at the time that was an imposter syndrome? You obviously subsequently did take it on, you were successful. So when did you recognize and realize that you had to almost not listen to that little voice inside, but to push yourself out there?
Yeah, I mean, I kept wondering, there's plenty of, excellent candidates here in the US. Why are you going to recruit me from up there? But as I got to know the firm more, the penny dropped probably about 3 months in. I think, the first 3 months in any new role, it's all a bit of a fog, and there's huge pressure on you. The spotlight's on you. The whole firm knows about you. And that's a lot of weight to carry. And the first few months, you don't know really who's who. You're trying to get to know your team, you're trying to get to know really what the priorities should be. You're finding those landmines that they couldn't have told you about because they didn't all know where they were. And I think with that job here in Houston with Baker Botts, that was probably at about the 3-month mark. I woke up one morning and thought, you know what, you can do this. It's scale. Yes, it's different, but it's already starting to settle in your mind where the focus really needs to be and where you can make a difference to help the top line grow. And that's why we're here, really. So, roll your sleeves up, get in front of the board, show them your plan, and get on with it. If you've got their support and mandate, then you need to get out of your own way here and get out of your own head.
Get out your mind. Yeah, that's such good advice. Yeah. And do you have your group of people around you there, your psychological safe group that you could talk to? And when you were having some moments of doubt or even just to try ideas out again, who was that for you?
Yeah, I think without really knowing it, I've built kind of my own board of directors over the years, people who are both professional relationships and personal relationships who know me well. I could turn to brainstorm, just to have a brain dump about an issue that I was having, just a tap on the shoulder, sometimes a smack around the head to, get on with this type of conversation. I didn't really think about that as I was building my network over the years, but now when I look back on it, that's who they really are. They're people who've been my bosses in different situations. Before I left the UK, I'm still in touch with people that I worked with back then who helped me, get over some of these hurdles. My friends and my family along the way who've been incredibly supportive of my career and my growth. People who've worked for me, honestly, Nikki, who I have tremendous respect for, who continue to grow in their careers. And we still talk about, the days when we worked together when I was helping them, but actually they were helping me too. Yeah. They were helping me learn the firms, learn the cultures, and build programs and initiatives that were going to stick. So, I don't know how many people that is if I was to add them up, but they're still there, and I'm still really grateful for their support. Other CMOs that I've met along the way who I truly admire, the work that they've done, that I see through the various CMO networks that we have that are out there. Some that are more formal than others, some who are now retired and moved on to other parts of their lives. It's just really important, I think, that you think about that from time to time. Who are they? To take a step back and look at who surrounds you.
I completely agree with you, because you are the people that you work with, the people that you surround yourself with. Those are the people that you're investing in, you're learning from. You want to make sure it's good quality as well, don't you? It's so important. And it sounds like you were really intentional, though, at times with your networking. And even when you decided you want to pay it forward and help launch the LMA in Europe and London, what led you to that side of being able to really think what's next for the future generations?
So it became obvious to me the first time I assumed a team in London that they really had nowhere to go and network. They were relatively junior. There were more senior networks in London. But I'm talking about kind of the coordinator, the manager level in that London office. And I was heavily involved with LMA in Vancouver and in Canada at the time. So even back then, I spoke to the LMA board about, have you looked at how can we do something in London? But LMA wasn't ready for it then. As the years went by, then they were. And my teams grew as I changed firms. I had more and more people in London. So when the opportunity came to speak to LMA again about the London market and talk to them about how they tried to approach it and get it going before. And I suggested to them, well, perhaps another way to look at this is to talk to the CMOs like myself who have US-based CMOs, who have sizable teams in the UK, and we're facing the same problem. And maybe we can help you get some legs under this and build some contacts with similar CMOs in the London market who have people here in the US, but there's no forum for them to cross-pollinate.
Yeah.
And that's really how it all started. I do believe this is a profession. I believe we make a choice just as much as the lawyers have made a choice to be in their profession. There comes a point when you are in legal marketing and business development, and to transition out of this becomes increasingly difficult. It's probably kind of at that manager, senior manager level. So that's the point where it's a point of inflection, I think, in their careers, where they need more exposure to the issues and the challenges, the opportunities that are out there, the changing environment that we work in. And LMA plays such a big part in that, as do other networks. I'm a big believer in developing your own professional development network within your firm as well, and showing the team how the organization is structured, what the logical career path is, what the difference is between different levels as they progress through a career, particularly in a big team like this, and supporting them with that, with some training, some mentoring within the team and outside, access to those resources that they need to be able to continue to learn, and giving stretch assignments to them so that they can see what the next level would really look like.
I think that's such a good point, because again, you've got to be intentional in your own career, haven't you?
Yeah.
Around how you want to move it forward. And I think there's such a big place for your internal networks as well as external. And then also about helping, supporting, getting feedback on a regular basis. And as we know, most people these days want feedback that's good all the time. And that's not feedback. Sometimes it's good, but other times it's about improving and developing. And I always find that fascinating. But I love that thought process that you had around you pulling the CMO network together, and you all working as a collective to really help make this a better networking platform as well.
Yeah.
So you made a move again to a big firm. And was it the merger just happened, or you were going through the merger for BCLP?
The merger was about 2 years old when I joined them. Yeah.
So there was still quite a lot that needed to be sorted out and to go through. That must have been a huge challenge for you as well. Is that why you thought, this is it? I'm going to get in here. I'm going to get my hands dirty and help take this to the next stage.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Again, it came to me and I wasn't particularly looking to leave Baker Botts at the time, but I thought, this is really interesting. A truly global platform, a large presence in London, and the need to knit the team together to create a global team. So not being one to shy away from a challenge, I thought I'd try that. Again, it was another big step up. You don't know what you don't know until you get into roles. And that's true through everybody's career, I think. And again, that was another sort of 3 months in realizing just how big that firm is and what was going to be needed there to truly tie this team together, to create a more global, more international focus, both for the partners and for the team itself. And that's what really, took me back to London in a big way, spending more time there as I do now. Something which I very much enjoy. And I do believe that has to be done. So you understand, we're going to talk about this, the differences between the North American, the US market, and the European and the UK situation. I hadn't fully appreciated it, to be quite honest, until I got to BCLP and I spent more time with the London-based partners.
How did you find that then? Because as you say, you don't know what you don't know. And you've run big teams before, you've run from multi-locations. How did it feel for you then, coming into that environment and thinking, wow, this is even more complex than I anticipated?
Really, it came from looking at the client base and where the opportunities for the firm to grow are. And I think this is true in any of the global roles, to be honest. It's driven by the transatlantic opportunities so creating client teams, developing that framework, looking at reporting and data, bringing data into the picture so that we could all start to appreciate where the opportunities really were and focusing in. So trying to not limit the scope, but focus the scope on what's going to be achievable. Our role is to build the top line revenue. We all have many different titles, but that's really what we're here to do. And figuring out ways that we can do that, programs that need to be developed, the types of people that we hire, working with the partners, understanding the client base. So spending some time really digging in on where the revenue is coming from right now. Who are those clients? Where are the missed opportunities? Who are the competition in that space? How can you displace them? Because that's really the only way we grow our business. finding some quiet time to do that kind of thinking. Luckily, when you're on a plane a lot, that's when I do it.
Yeah, you got
I
time.
honestly do try not to log into the Wi-Fi on
Yeah.
every log flight that I'm on, because I think that's actually quality time for me.
Yeah. You were doing a lot of travel then.
Yes. And I still am. I probably, I'm on the road every other week, maybe. Maybe I come to London for 2 weeks at a time. I believe that's important. I have learned that the in and on Monday and out on a Friday when you're in a global role, that's difficult to become embedded with the partners and with the team, especially when you've got a big office like we have here at Reed Smith in London. So I actually find that's better for me personally too. I get over the jet lag. I feel like I'm integrated in the office. They see me at lunch in the cafeteria. They see me walking to work, getting off the tube every day. And I personally feel that I'm part of the office when I work like that.
Yeah. And that's so important, isn't it, in your role? As you
Yeah.
say, you need to be seen. It's absolutely essential, isn't it? So you were doing the role at BCLP and, as you say, it was a huge role and you were really trying to pull the team together, do all the positive bits. And then you decided it was time to move on. How was that for you? Because you'd put a lot of time, effort, energy into the role as well.
Yeah, I had. It was just an opportune time for me to take some time out. And I was lucky. It was a good year before the opportunity at Reed Smith came to me, and I was ready to think about if I was going to go back in-house again, what would that look like?
Yeah.
I know I was very fortunate to have that time when I could think about me and what I'd accomplished and what I wanted to do next. What did that look like for me? What would the next opportunity look like? A chance to spend some time again with my family. I was still in Texas. My 2 daughters live up in Vancouver. I spent some time up there with them. Spent some time with my family in the UK. I think when those opportunities come along to take stock and to recharge, I think we should take them if we can. Even if it's our 2-week holiday, we need to be able to switch off. And that's hard at senior levels. I try to do it with my vacation time and say, I check my emails in the morning. I check them again in the evening. If it's a burning matter, put in the subject line, please read, and I will. Otherwise, I'll get to it when I can, because these roles do take it. They're tiring. They're emotionally and physically tiring. So I was fortunate that I had that time to think about things before Reed Smith came along knocking.
And then you decided, I'm not over doing a huge, big job. And lots of travel again. Took on the big role at Reed Smith. And how's that been? Because it was February, wasn't it? You started there.
Yeah.
How have you been able to pick it up, transition, really get to understand the firm? Again, another firm that's got huge global presence. How's that going, Gillian?
Well, one of the key factors for me is we do have this office in Houston, and I feel like I have a home base, and it's a great office. There's some great partners here, great clients here in Texas. I'm building the team out here in Houston with me. And I'd forgotten, since I left Baker Botts, BCLP didn't have an office in Houston. I was working 100% remotely. How important that is for me. I'd forgotten that, to feel grounded, to feel like this is my home, this is my presence here with them, and get to know the Houston partners. But having said that, yes, I'm on the road a lot of the time, but still I walk back in the office, sit down in my office, and it's like, and I ground myself again. It's one of those things I've realized about myself over the years. It's really important to me. And I live quite close to the office. I'm 10 minutes in, 10 minutes out, but it helps me feel really grounded. Managing the travel, I've learned over the years what works for me. I'm not a big fan, as I say, of the fly in on a Monday and fly out on a Friday. If I'm doing that, then I might leave on a Sunday evening and show up in the New York office or the Chicago office on Monday morning. Give myself a bit more time to settle in and get integrated. Your job travels with you. It's not like you show up in the London office or in the Chicago office and there's nothing else to do except everything that is there. So pacing myself through the day, using the time zones to help with that. Extra time when I'm in London before the US gets up and comes online. Valuable hours for me to spend with the London partners, the European partners, the London-based team. So I know that by the time the US comes on at 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have cleared a lot of my European to-dos off my list. I've had my meetings and I've managed my day, because that's when it really picks up again. Now that means it's a long day at the end.
It's a long day for you.
But pacing myself through that has been really important.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think, as you were saying, it's that realization of you can't do everything. This is why you need a good team around you and why you build people to be able to take these roles on, and you have that trust factor that they can report to you if something needs to really have your attention. You
Yeah.
don't need to do everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true, in all of the offices where there are members of my team. And I spend time talking to them about that. When I'm not there, you're the face of the team and you're the face of the plan that the firm's expecting me to deliver on. So I think that's an important message for them to understand as well, because it helps remind them you are actually part of a global team, and developing those opportunities for them to work together and to integrate together, so they continue to have the perspective that I have, that we're members of a global team here working for a global firm.
Yeah, which I love. And what about you personally? And when do you think that you transitioned from being a manager, that you recognize you were actually leading? Because it's such a different thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It was probably the first role in Canada as a CMO. Prior to that, as I was vice president of business development, so I was really in sales. Leadership that was a smaller team that I was leading. It was when I realized that you are the figurehead and you're at the front of this train. It's a huge responsibility and accountability for the team, and being able to think about what's needed right now. Is it management? Is it direction? Or is it leadership? And those three things can sometimes be quite distinct as to what's needed at that particular time in a meeting or in a conversation. And thinking about the skills that you need to bring to bear in the moment to work with that individual or that partner or that group of partners. I think you seriously feel it when you stand up at the partner conference. That was a sobering moment. The first time I was on the stage at the partner conference in Canada for Fasken, and you look out and you realize, there's 200-300 people all with their eyes on you. And what's needed now is leadership, because they're looking to you to take the firm forward in this space around client development, business development, marketing, and show leadership to the partnership so that they have confidence that they've got the right person, because it's their firm at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, because lawyers are, really intelligent, skilled people in the practice of law, but they look particularly to CMOs to understand how to better get that message out to market. And so they do need to look up at you and go, we're listening to you. What's the value add, and how are you going to help us and support us during that journey? So I think it's essential.
Right. Those are big moments, I think, for anybody. The first time that you do that, you realize the magnitude of your role.
Did it take you back to being in South Yorkshire and mum saying to you, you can always come back?
What could possibly go wrong, Yes. There have been many moments in my career when I've thought about my mom and my dad. And, I was lucky they got to see a large part of it. And they got to see me in action in some cases. And they got to share, and as they rightly should, and be proud of me and what I had accomplished with their support and their hard work. I wasn't the easiest of teenagers to have. But to see your children thrive and grow. And I feel that now, I see this in my daughters, and I step back and think, you know what? We raised good kids. They're thriving in their careers. They're very happy with their lives. And I think, my mom and dad must have seen that with me. And you take a deep breath and think, I had a part in that.
I love that. I love also that your mum knew exactly how to play you by saying, come back, everything will be exactly the same. You'll be exactly the same people. That is a very good skill. Well done, Mum.
But, I've never forgotten where I came from. You can hear it in my accent sometimes. I think, it's pretty deep in me, and I'm proud of that too. It's a hardworking environment in the north of England, and many good friends that I still have that are there, and my family who some are still in the UK and some are over in Ireland now. I think, that is who I am, and that is at the core of me.
Which is what's built your resilience and determination and hard work as well, which is those roots, isn't it? It's that you learn, as you say, from a very young age. It's fantastic. And what about your balancing with, motherhood and your career? Because your career has always been incredibly important to you, but I also know your family is incredibly important to you, as you've mentioned. So how have you managed to balance that off? What's the secret? Tell me.
Not perfectly. If girls would say that. Didn't do it. It was a perfect for a while at the time. When they were little and I was traveling a lot, when I came home on a Friday evening, that was it. I was on for the weekend. I caught up with them, found out, what had been going on at school that week, looked at what they were doing with their homework and their projects, was very involved. They were both football players, soccer players, was very
Okay.
involved with that and their friends and knowing what was happening. And then it was really hard though, Nikki, then on Sunday night or Monday morning to leave again. And,
Yeah.
they were little. We didn't have FaceTime and things like that then. But to call home regularly, talk to them, stay connected to the family and the plan. They knew when I would be coming home. They didn't always know where I was. It turned out one of them, some weeks their friend would say to them at school, "Where's your mum this week?" I don't know. It's kind of sad, if I could go back and correct some things, but they were little. And all I needed to know was that they were settled and that they were happy. They loved school. They were happy in school, and that they did know that why I was doing it. And as they got older, their appreciation, I think, grew for that. But I'm not saying it was easy, Nikki. It wasn't for everybody that was concerned.
Yeah.
But they both have great careers now. They understand that sometimes sacrifices do have to be made in life, and we do the best that we can.
Yeah.
For everybody.
And you're an inspirational female role model. So, for both of your girls, I'm sure that's, as you say, as they get older, that becomes even more important.
Yes. And they've got some great role models within our family and within their friend network and their mothers too, who were there. And they've actively sought out, I think, people who were going to surround them and give them what they need. And when I talk to them now, I give them that advice, try to figure out, kind of who your board is. Who do you go to for personal and professional grounding and advice? And as you grow in your life and your career, I think that will stand them really well. Because here we are again. I live in Texas. They're still in Vancouver. But the distance now is something that lots of people live with, frankly, in this day and age. And technology really helps.
Yeah.
When my FaceTime goes off and it's one of them, I know it's something very important that they need to share with me right now, which could just be, the new pair of shoes that they've bought, or
that is very important. Yes.
Or it could be, the next job interview or something like that. I love it. I love being that part of their lives.
That's great. Really good. We talked about this transatlantic piece and being able to understand different markets and the way that things work. How easy/difficult is that? Because, you say the US is massive and it's so different, isn't it? State by state. So how do you get your head around that?
Yeah, that's an interesting to explain to people who are outside the US that there actually is no such thing as the US market. There are multiple markets, both economically, culturally, in every single way in the US. San Francisco isn't like New York. New York's not like Houston. Texas isn't like Washington State. And understanding that and thinking about, truly, what are you talking about when you talk about the US market? And where are you really focusing and why? And so explaining that to people from outside the US, but also explaining particularly the London market is very different from anything I think we have in the US, even New York. That concentration of pretty much everything happens in that 5-mile radius in the city of London. The clients are there, the competition's there, your lateral partners are there, the people we hire are all right there. And when they change jobs, they often just continue to get off at the same tube station. They just turn left instead of turning right to go to work. It is very intense and very intentional in London too. And I don't think there's a city in the US that quite operates that way. The clients are all there within the city for most firms too. But navigating that and accepting the challenges and the opportunities that presents from marketing and business development, I think is getting your head around that and helping firms understand, in the US, we're not talking about the US, we're talking about clients and opportunities for growth in New York or here in Houston or wherever it might be. And in London and in the European cities, it's right there on your doorstep. So being able to tailor your approaches and understand what that means from a marketing perspective, what it means from a client targeting perspective and a growth perspective, now that takes some time to get there, but the partners can really help you with that too. So that would be also my advice. So listening to the partners, understanding what their day-to-day looks like, the types of discussions they have with those clients. Those clients are all under the same kind of pressures, no matter which market that they're in. But how you deliver back to them needs to be thought through quite carefully.
I think that's such a good point. And again, it's not presuming, is it? It's always asking those questions and getting feedback from the people that are in location to ensure that you're speaking the right language, because it is so important. It's absolutely essential. I know that you've obviously, throughout your time, particularly during COVID, it was a really stressful time for so many people. And you particularly, I think, got very involved with the teams during that period of time, didn't you? Because you could recognise and see the personal pressures that people were under.
Yeah.
How did you respond to that? 'Cause it was difficult, really difficult time, wasn't it?
It was a very difficult time. But one of the good things that came out of it, ironically, I think, was staying put and being able to focus and think about once we got organized, with Zoom and
Yeah.
everything else that had to happen. I felt truly privileged to be invited into people's homes. And I saw people, at their kitchen table with the toddler, with the dog barking at the door, and understanding people's worlds. Like I'm a big people person. And we would never have had that understanding of what does their day-to-day really look like and how are they fitting in the work that needs to get done, plus me again as the leader, taking them through that because I was still relatively new at BCLP at the
Yeah.
time. And they didn't know me very well. And how could they get to know me? And how could I get to know them? And look at what they were doing and assess their performance and their impact through a screen like this. The partners too, big calls with 50, 60 people on it, trying to figure out how do we communicate through that, and really thinking through a communication cascade of being able to talk to the team on an all call, but then work with smaller groups to make sure that things were getting cemented and implemented through that, what was it, 18 months, nearly 2 years in some cases, before they were ever actually able to spend time with me. But I distinctly remember that feeling of, this is a real privilege. Like I'm sitting in their kitchen with them now. I have a greater appreciation for them as individuals and how I think I can help them with their career and their path at the firm. It wasn't great. We all know that. That was far from ideal, particularly for me being in a new role. But then when kind of I settled into it, accepting that this is the way it was going to be for a while, learning to organize my day differently and my time differently and have some fun with it as best we could, when the UPS driver arrived and barking, and we joked about on our calls of, what did the UPS driver bring this week? What would you like to go with the class? What was your biggest takeaway? I'll be honest, mine was going back to wearing leggings again. I mean, how could we have done that on a daily
I can't imagine you. You're always so glamorous.
Right? But they were the most comfortable thing to wear when you're sitting at a desk all day. So we did have some fun with it. I'm thinking about that now. Like, I haven't really continued that, and we should, because there has to be some moments of levity in these careers.
Did it change you as a leader then, that period of time?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it did. Appreciation of, I have a partial responsibility for their careers and their life, for the team, but also for the partners too. I mean, as equally as I was sitting in their kitchen, I was also sitting, at the kitchen counter with a partner, and understanding these are everybody's lives here that we're trying to impact and we're trying to move and to change. I do think that changed in me, and I have those moments now when I stop again and I wonder what's going on the other side.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that will be something that you'll have moved into your new role as well, which, these things always impact and change us, don't they?
Yeah.
Hopefully for that, moving us forward as well, which is always good. And what about challenges that are facing CMOs in law firms at the moment, or opportunities, challenges and opportunities?
Right.
Have?
Well, some of them I think have always been our challenges, building and finding the right people on the team when they've got lots of options and great firms out there who are doing, amazing things. How do you create that opportunity and that space where people want to be and will continue to grow? I think that's still fundamental. The business of law is changing around us. And we all talk about, the impact of AI on what we're doing, the big four moving into legal, clients becoming increasingly savvy about the firms that they're working with. Yeah. Sometimes they know more than we do. Keeping up with that pace of change and knowing where and when it can be applied to the work that we do. I think that is, compared to what I was doing 15 years ago, very, very different today. Constantly thinking about the efficiency and the effectiveness of the team and how technology can help us and help the partners too grow their business, get closer to their clients. What is it that they're going to need from us to keep pace with the competition and get ahead of the competition for the around? There's only two ways you grow business. One, invent something new to deliver. Law firms aren't great at that. Or you're taking business away from another law firm. So how are you going to do that? What is your competitive proposition? What is your advantage over the firms that are out there? And how can you best leverage the technology and the opportunities that are in front of us? That's something I think about all day and every day now. And I'm not sure that was true even 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you talk about obviously talent and the importance of talent in your firm. And, what lots of people are looking at now is culture is a lot of the time is number one, or if number one or two, learning and development, people want to know how they're going to progress. There's a whole complexity of managing multi-generational teams, isn't there? And then, each stage, people want different things. So again, as a leader, you're trying to pull all of that together and create an environment where hopefully everyone is going to be able to bring their true authentic selves into the workplace. But it's a lot of balancing and do your jobs as well, your day-to-day jobs.
Yeah. I also think the relationships with my peers, with the other chiefs at the firm, we're all dealing with the spinning plates. The Venn diagram is very complex. Our interconnectivity is very apparent. So, I spent a fair bit of time at Reed Smith getting to know the people in professional development, for example, in recruitment, and helping them understand where we're trying to go with this, working with the finance team on the types of reporting that I'm getting and what I need to see and how do we make this better. Working with data, but what do we do with it? How do you make it actionable? How do you interpret that and have the data tell a story? So working with my chiefs, the chief innovation officer, the chief financial officer, on working with that information so we can work with the partners to help identify where those opportunities might be. It's a much more focused role than it used to be on top line growth.
Yeah.
And with that,
well, it's
pressure.
Essential. Yeah. And there's a lot of pressure, as you say, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that as well, isn't there?
Yep.
And so what's been your biggest learn throughout your career then? Has it been that one moment where you've gone, or is it been a continuous learning?
I think learning my mum was actually right. But
I'm sure she would have loved to have heard that.
Yeah, right. Could you just stop and think? Could you just slow down a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm a pretty action-oriented, A-type individual. But learning to take a step back and take a breath. It's okay to do that. And often it serves you better than just charging ahead. But that takes some confidence to do that, because when you move into these roles, the expectation that you will act now and you will make this, bigger, better, different today is right there. So having the confidence to be able to say, here's what I'm going to do, and here's how long it's going to take me to get there, and here are my steps along the way. I think that's something that I've learned to do, rather than jump to the conclusions and then just start delivering and having to backpedal. Retracting isn't an easy or a happy thing to have to do. So it's worthwhile just to take that time to reflect and think cautiously and lay it out so people can understand and get with you onto the program, rather than acting and just hoping they'll catch up with you later.
Well, that again reflects the importance of communication, doesn't it? Particularly if you have a global role like yours. Your communication is going to have to be multiple ways, isn't it, to be able to resonate? And sometimes you just have to over communicate to make sure that people know what the path is, and to get people on that journey with you.
The rule's something like, say it 6 times, 6 different ways, and maybe people will grasp it then.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to think about when it's something incredibly important that you're communicating, but that takes time. So, slow down and make sure, that you're covering the bases appropriately. Otherwise it will run away with you.
Yeah. And multifaceted as well. So, some people understand better from a video call, or some people it's an email or Teams or whatever. So you've just got to think all the time, haven't you? Again, about the different people working on your team, which I think is, I know, something that you do a lot of as well.
Yeah. And with the partners too, when it's a new person that's coming to the seat, they have to get to know you too. So they get to know through mediums like this. They get to know me through, my presence in the office, through emails, through lots of ways that I can interface with them. But it's also me prioritizing and understanding who and when and where. It's a big partnership. I can't be in everybody's office every single day, which goes back to the strength of the team underneath me too. They carry a lot of that weight, and I'm very grateful that they do. So using my time and my influence judiciously, I think, is very important.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So what about words of wisdom, Gillian? To Gillian, who was growing up just outside of a Yorkshire village, very small Yorkshire village, and mum saying, don't worry, you can always come back. What words of wisdom would you give, Gillian?
Find that confidence in yourself and know how to use it appropriately. As you go through your career and as you grow, that's what people are really looking for. They want to have that confidence in you. So even when you might not have it, you got to figure out how you're going to project it and get people understanding that you can be trusted and you know what you're doing. But I do think being brave, Nikki, and maybe that comes from confidence too, and being willing to take some of those chances in life. I know you've done it too. I try not to use the word regret very much.
Yeah. Learn.
I just thought, what would I have done differently? And I think that's okay, because what you would have done differently might shape what you will do tomorrow with things. But I have to say it, I think being brave and taking some of those chances that I did, which were pretty silly looking back at it, but would I change it? Absolutely not. It's good. She was right. 'Cause you can always go backwards, but going forwards is a trajectory that presents some really interesting opportunities in life if you're willing to take them.
I love that. And I love the fact that you grew your career early on in very male-dominated environments, didn't you? So, you've had to create a persona whilst remaining authentic to yourself
Yes.
along the way and grow. How challenging was that for you, particularly as a young woman in the field that you were working? How challenging was that for you?
I think it was more challenging than I knew at the time.
Mm.
Those were very different times as well, in the world. I think some of it I just accepted as being, that's just the way it is. But I also had some really good mentors who were men professionally. One of my very first bosses was probably the person who encouraged me to spread my wings, to be brave. He promoted me a couple of times when I probably wasn't ready, but I knew he had my back. And when those difficult situations did occur, now I look back on it and I think, when I went to him and talked to him about a difficult situation, whether it was with a client, a customer, or someone at work, he had my back. He showed me how to navigate it, but he would wade in for me too when he needed to and support me to help get them through that. I've also worked for some very strong women who I looked at and thought, I'm not sure I quite want to be like that one day, but there's elements of that I know I need to adopt. Women who were kind to other women too. It's essential. So that the men in my career who helped me through some of those difficult situations, and the women who showed me how it could be done and what it could look like. I didn't know that at the time, but I know that now.
That's great. I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm really going to take your advice, being brave and reflecting to learn. It's not that you've made regrets or mistakes, it's always learned along the way, which is a very good way of doing it. So thank you so much for your time, Gillian. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you too. Thanks, Nikki. Bye.